All right, in this screencast we're going to learn all about variations and applications. So in variation problems you're going to see the phrase y varies directly as some other variable, usually x. And so when you see that, you're going to set up an equation that looks just like this: y equals kx, where k is the constant of proportionality. Okay, some problems will also say directly proportional instead of varies directly, but they mean the same thing. So let's do an example here. The distance sound travels varies directly, there's that phrase, varies directly, as the time it travels. So we've got two variables, distance, which we'll call d, and time, t. So from that first sentence we can set up our equation. D equals kt. Okay, let's see what else they tell us. If sound travels 1,340 meters in 4 seconds, find the distance sound will travel in 5 seconds. So usually the first thing you have to do is figure out what k is, and they'll always give enough information to do that. So you'll notice that they gave us a distance and they gave us a time. And so I'm going to divide both sides by 4 to figure out what k is. And I'll get up my calculator, and 1340 divided by 4. Whoop, didn't like that, did it? Divided by 4. There we go, 335. So now we know what k is. So now we know that our equation is d equals 335t. So the rest of the problem is pretty easy. Find the distance sound will travel in 5 seconds means I just put in 5 for t. 5, and let's see what that'll be. Times 5. It'll travel 1,675 meters. 1,675 meters. Now there's no reason why x has to be to the first power. It can be raised to a power or taken the square root of or whatever. So let's do an example where it's raised to a power. Okay, this says that the distance y that an object falls from rest varies directly as the square of the time t. So there's our equation. Y is kt squared. If an object falls 64 feet in 2 seconds, so that's going to give us k, all right? 64 is equal to k times 2 squared. 64 divided by 4 is k, so k is 16. So now we know that y is 16 t squared, and the question is how far will it fall in 10 seconds? So y is 16 times 10 squared, which is 16 times 100, which will be 1,600 feet. Okay, in addition to direct variation, you can also have inverse variation. Now remember that with direct variation, y was k times x. In inverse variation, y is k divided by x. And so you're going to see the words varies inversely or is inversely proportional to whenever you're dealing with this situation. So here's a famous example of inverse variation. In chemistry, Boyle's law states that the volume V of a sample of gas at constant temperature varies inversely as the pressure P. So we can say that V is K divided by P. All right, so here's our info. The volume is 75 milliliters when the pressure is 1.5 atmospheres. So 75 is equal to K divided by 1.5. 1.5 times 75, well, that's not right, times 75 will give us K. So I'm going to go 1.5 times 75 to get K. 75, please. There we go. 112.5 is K. That means that volume is 112.5 divided by P. Now we're asked to find the volume when pressure is 2.5. So the volume will be 112.5 divided by 2.5, and that will be, I'm going to do divided by 2.5, 45. So the volume will be 45 milliliters when the pressure is 2.5 atmospheres. Now, joint variation problems involve 3 or more variables. So you can say that a variable z varies jointly as the variables x and y. And all that means is you've got z equals our constant k times x times y. So here's an example. The cost of insulating a house varies jointly as the thickness of the insulation and the area of the ceiling. So there are 3 variables. So we'll say C for cost is K times T for thickness times A for the area. All right, now it tells us that it costs $175 to insulate a 2,100 square foot ceiling with insulation that is 4 inches thick. So we'll put 4 in for T and 2,100 in for the area. So to find K, I'm going to go 175 divided by parentheses 4 times 2,100 close parentheses, and I'm getting 0.02083 repeating, 0.02083 repeating equals K. So now we're supposed to find the cost when A is 2,400 and T is 6. Okay, so cost will be 0.02083 repeating times 6 times 2,400. Let's get our calculator up here again. I'm going to go times 6 times 2,400, and I get 300. So it's going to cost us $300 to do that job. And finally, we have something called combined variation. And in that kind of problem, you have both direct and inverse variation happening at the same time. So here's an example. U varies directly as V and inversely as the square root of W. So let's write out our equation here. U equals K times V, because it's directly as V, divided by, because it's inversely, as the square root of W. And U equals 0.04 when V equals 8 and W equals 0.04. Write an expression that relates U, V, and W. In other words, let's find K. Okay, so I'm going to go 0.04 times the square root of 0.04 divided by 8 to get K. And let's get our calculator going. 0.04 times the square root of 0.04 divided by 8, 0.001. So here's our expression. U equals 0.001 V over the square root of W. And so when you combine both direct and inverse variation, you have something called combined variation. And that's really all the different kinds of variation you're going to deal with in college algebra.